Good evening. It's a happy day and it's a good day to be happy. Thank you so much for joining. This is the day we're live on Family TV, also live on Family Radio, where the music does the talking. You can always contact us using the WhatsApp number 0786316316 or also through the SMS line 20316 on Facebook and Twitter at Family Radio 316. Well, today we look at some of the stories that are making headline, also including the proposal that was given, the directive that was given by the CJ, and he is actually requesting the president to dissolve parliament. Many people are talking about this, and this is where we'll be basing our discussion today. But for now, let's get started with the top stories. Now, the Parliamentary Service Commission has resolved to move to the High Court to challenge Chief Justice David Maraga's advisory to President Uhuru Kenyatta to dissolve parliament for failure to enact laws to achieve the two-third gender rule. Speaking after chairing the commission meeting, Speaker of the National Assembly Justin Muturi said that Maraga's advice was ill-advised, premature and unconstitutional. In his advisory, Maraga recommended the dissolution of the legislature in response to 6 petitions seeking his advice on the matter, which is the acronym of Constitutional Imperative, which prohibits any form for discrimination in the appointment and elective positions in the country on the basis of one's gender. Muturi further noted that the action is a recipe for plunging the country into a constitutional crisis for monumentary proportions.
The Commission regrets that the Chief Justice appears to be willing, even eager, to plunge the country into a constitutional crisis without exercising wisdom and circumspection that is expected of the high office that he holds. For the reasons advanced herein, among others, the Parliamentary Service Commission, in furtherance of its constitutional mandate and on the request of the Speakers of the two Houses of Parliament, has resolved to engage counsel to immediately proceed to the High Court pursuant to Article 165, Clause 3 of the Constitution, to challenge the unlawful and unconstitutional action taken by the Right Honourable Chief Justice. In the meantime, the Parliamentary Service Commission is convinced that the present matter shall be resolved lawfully and calls for calm and sobriety in order to avert the kind of national anxiety and despondency that the action by the Right Honourable Chief Justice could elicit. I thank you.
While still in that matter, Mbita Member of Parliament Millie Odhiambo has urged members of Parliament not to make Chief Justice David Maraga's advisory to dissolve Parliament as a personal matter. During a sitting in Parliament this afternoon, she said that the matter is in the hands of President Uhuru Kenyatta and it is up to him to decide whether to dissolve the House due to loopholes in law over the time requirement. Kiminini Member of Parliament Chris Wamalwa accused some women MPs for pretending, quote-unquote, to be keen on achieving the two-third gender law, but were lining up to pick allowances for foreign trips and were away when and during the times the matter came up for voting. The MPs engaged in an animated debate on the same advisory.
Legislative history, and I know why we came up with this, and if we actually go to legislative history, it will show you why we came up with this. And I sat in the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee in the 10th Parliament as the Vice Chair, and we actually rushed to ensure that we pass this because of this article in the Constitution. And the reason we are doing that is because we were concerned about Parliament failing, as has been the history in the country, to pass certain laws. Mr. Speaker, let us be sober. I would urge that we come up with a team in this House to look at this matter from a very sober perspective. The only thing I agree with Honorable Duale is on the issue of unity of purpose. Not because I fear going back home, but because we need to be sober.
But where one stands in terms of controversy and challenge like now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was very affected and perplexed by the ill advice, premature advice from the Chief Justice. Mr. Speaker, why do I say so? We are aware, Mr. Speaker, on this matter of two-third gender. 2017, there was an order that was given by Justice Motivo, Mr. Speaker. And the Chief Justice knows in 2 weeks' time there is going to be a hearing to determine whether that order is applicable was applicable in 11th Parliament or in this 12th Parliament. What was the hurry for? That's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying it was a challenge. Is it because he's about to retire in 3 months' time, Mr. Speaker? Is it because he wants to go down in Parliament? He wants to go down with BBI, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, even the Supreme Court itself, those judges, they do not subscribe to the two-thirds gender rule.
All right, the women leaders have welcomed Chief Justice David Maraga's decision advising the president to dissolve parliament for failing to pass the two-thirds gender rule. Speaking in Kajiado after attending a rite of passage ceremony, the women MPs led by Homa Bay Women Representative Gladys Wanga lauded Maraga for his courage, saying parliament must accept it has failed as far as the two-thirds gender rule is concerned. Nominated Senator Rose Nyamunga called upon the Chief Justice to uphold the Constitution and support the implementation of the law without fear. Former Nairobi County Assembly Speaker Beatrice Elachi said Maraga must ensure he leaves a legacy when his term comes to an end, and the only way to be remembered is by ensuring that institutions are taken to task for failing to implement that mandate.
Unga mkono sana masuala ya Maraga kwa sababu sisi kama wabunge, kama ni nafasi tulipewa mara nyingi sana na tukaleta bills tofauti na kila wakati tunapopiga kura kuhusiana na sheria hii watu wanachukulia ati ni sheria ya kina mama.
Today we celebrate the history that indeed Maraga is about to leave, but I'm hoping and praying he will leave and we will remember him. 1, the nullification. 2, Parliament must ensure the two-thirds it's there. If not, let it be dissolved.
I think it is also extremely unfortunate if the CJ Maraga does not appreciate the dynamics that are in this country and also the challenges that are there in our communities, that our women are still coming up, our youth are still coming up in terms of going into elective seats. What we would urge is that Parliament finds a way to progressively achieve the gender rule.
This is the constitution moment we've been talking about. There is no law and no wish and no desire that's greater than the constitution of this country. And the constitution clearly dictated the dictate on the two-thirds gender rule. And the Constitution actually gave us a timeline in which everything in the Constitution was to be effected. But now, 10 years down the line, the two-thirds gender rule is the only thing that has not been effected.
All right, there we have it. In the section of members of parliament have said, and I'm talking about the Mbita member of parliament, Gladys Wanga, who said that she is pushing for this. And it's not because that she is afraid of going home. Well, that brings us to the question that we are asking today. If just in case the parliament is dissolved, would you re-elect your member of parliament? Would you re-elect them back to represent you? Send in your responses on that question. If it is dissolved, if parliament is dissolved, would you re-elect your member of parliament? 0786 316 316. That is on WhatsApp, SMS line 20316. I want to hear from you. Sarah Naivasha, you're saying, I would not vote in my member of parliament again. And I don't wish to disclose ni nani. Thank you for that. Remember the question that we are asking today. Just in case parliament is dissolved, would you re-elect your member of parliament to be your representative again? Would you re-elect them? 0786 316 316. That is on WhatsApp, SMS line 20316. Now, in other news, the Kenyan National Union of Teachers has asked tutors to honor their employer's call and return to school as instructed yesterday. The Teacher Service Commission yesterday ordered both primary and secondary school teachers to report back to the learning institutions by September 28th ahead of the eventual reopening of schools. Wilson Sosion, the NAT Secretary General, earlier today said teachers are prepared to recover the time lost following the coronavirus pandemic that triggered the closure of schools in the mid-March last year. This year, actually. And he made the statement at NAT headquarters during the launch of a gender-based violence sensitization program today.
There is no debate about it. and we are not negotiating. We have committed ourselves as your representatives, go back to school. There's a lot of work to do in terms of preparation. And one of the key preparation we are urging teachers to do is to begin developing a checklist of mapping out all the learners and identifying some of the challenges they might have gone at home. Our teachers in Kenya have the best skills, instruments, and capacity to know what has happened to every child, and to develop the necessary psychosocial support to those learners. Even girls who are pregnant, bring them back to school. Bring them back to school. We shall welcome them in our classrooms. If a girl is pregnant, come back to school and encourage them to come back to school. We shall support them until they deliver, even if it means giving them nutritional support. We will do it, even if it means giving them medical care. Those are some of the girls that must be given medical care and linked to the medical facilities together with COVID. So one of the components of the health care to the learners when they come back is even those pregnant girls to be linked to prenatal services in the healthcare facilities. We need them, and they need to know that the society loves them.
All right, in other news, President Uhuru Kenyatta has called for the rebuilding of the United Nations system to better address global crises, including the COVID-19 pandemic that has disproportionately impacted on the developing and the emerging economies. Kenyatta noted that the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the global vulnerabilities of the United Nations, and the president's message was contained in a pre-recorded video statement that was delivered yesterday evening during a virtual high-level meeting to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the UN and also mark the opening session of this year's UN General Assembly. Kenyatta said the anniversaries provided an opportunity for the world to reflect and assess the role and the relevance of the UN system, especially its charter, which speaks of a future that the world needs.
I do believe it is incumbent upon us to rethink how we can build a better United Nations. But in order to build back better the United Nations system, we must ensure that it is closer to the people, more representative of the 21st century, and in line with the spirit of leaving no one behind. We must work towards a United Nations that is better financed and equipped, to be more impactful, to deal with humanitarian crisis, and be effective in the mitigation as well as the elimination of civil and long protracted wars. A multilateral system that directly targets poverty and inequalities as a global priority that requires urgent and global collective action.
While the President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday also challenged leaders in our country to offer services to all Kenyans without considering their ethnicity, he admonished leaders who are going around the country preaching of hate speech and division, saying Kenyans need development and not empty political rhetorics. He was addressing Changamwe residents in Mombasa yesterday, where the president said that Kenyans are focused on what will see them feed their families. Well, this is what the president said yesterday when he was visiting the coast region. He was addressing residents of Changamwe. And indeed, this follows the calls for political leaders to stop focusing on hate speech and indeed focus on delivering services to Kenyans. And he says political leaders should do this without considering the ethnicity of an individual. Well, remember the question that we are asking today. If just in case Parliament is resolved as it has been advised by the CJ David Maraga, if in case the Parliament is dissolved, are you ready to re-elect your Member of Parliament? Would you re-elect your Member of Parliament? Well, Vincent Mulinge, you're saying, praise God, Sarah. Voting in Kenya is very tricky. It's a matter of choosing the type of hyena which will chew you slowly because they are all the same. That's very unfortunate. Thank you for that. Remy Kipchirchir, you're saying, I want to be voting in my Member of Parliament if the elections were held in today. I would rather have someone new, as you can see with the current state of affairs in our land. I want to hear from you. If Parliament was to be dissolved today, would you re-elect your Member of Parliament, the same one who is representing you right now? Well, let's go back to what the President was saying about ethnicity and delivering of services to Kenyans by our politicians.
Wasema ya kwamba ati sijui President ametoa port kutoka Mombasa ameipeleka Naivasha. Jameni, wakati niliingia katika uongozi wa taifa hili letu la Kenya, hii port ya Mombasa ilikuwa port ambaye ikiwekwa zaidi ilikuwa inabeba tani milioni 20.
Instead, the capacity of the port of Mombasa has increased.
All right, there we have it. Now let us look at the coronavirus update in our country today. And we have recorded 139 new cases, and that increases the case load to 37,218. And during the daily briefing today at Afya House, this health CAS, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, announced that 1,774 samples were tested, and of the positive cases, 125 are Kenyans, while 14 are foreigners. 112 are male, while 22 are female, with the youngest being a 4-year-old child and the oldest being an 82-year-old person.
Sample size of 1,774 tested within the last 24 hours. This brings the total caseload in the country to 37,218. In terms of our cases today, 125 of them are Kenyans, whereas 14 are foreigners. 112 are males, whereas 22 are female. The youngest is a 4-year-old and the oldest is 82. Sadly, 9 patients have succumbed to the disease, bringing the total fatality to 659.
All right, despite the fact that we have 198 that have recovered today, 9 have also lost their lives. And this one actually tells us that we still have coronavirus within us, so we must be vigilant. Well, Dr. Mwangangi stated that families could now participate in burial rites, with the Ministry of Health officials present only to observe, noting that the change of burial protocol was informed by the World Health Organization. CAS Mwangangi stated that all safety protocols must be observed, with those with underlying conditions not recommended to participate in activities such as pall bearing.
Dated the burial guidelines that were last issued in March 2020. The new set of guidelines is as promised last week to you and conforms to the current evidence that we have. These guidelines propose the following recommendations when it comes to burial rites. Going forward, families and communities will now be able to play a greater role in the burial of their loved ones who succumb to COVID-19. And in this regard, it will be no longer necessary for Ministry of Health teams to be dressed in full personal protective equipment to take over the burial ceremony, while the relatives, friends, and families watch from a distance with limited participation. Number 2, the families will from now henceforth take center stage in burial ceremonies, with the Ministry of Health officials only present to guide the process to ensure continued safety. Family members will be allowed to conduct safe burial rites according to their beliefs, according to their religion, to their cultural norms, and those of the deceased person. And so in this regard, we expect that families will identify members of the family who have no increased risk of COVID-19 outcomes. And these identified members are the ones who shall safely conduct the last rites and are recommended to utilize PPEs during the burial process. This means that if in your family you have someone who is diabetic, hypertensive, elderly, or a child, the Ministry of Health recommends that these individuals cannot participate in the role of being pallbearers, and families should instead find somebody who has no increased risk of infection of COVID-19. And it is important to remember that this disease is still within us and we must adhere to these protocols. During the burial process, it's expected that other safe rites will be followed by the family members as they mourn their loved ones in these unprecedented times. We continue to maintain restricted physical contact with the body, and also during the family rites to maintain social distancing, particularly at the grave sites.
All right, there we have it. Well, someone was telling me that the burial rites that Kenyans do are really so many, and they were affected by the COVID-19, which is true across our communities. But right now, the Ministry of Health, and this is actually a recommendation by the World Health Organization, has said that burial practices can now be done and those rites taken care of. But we must have an official from the Ministry of Health being there to observe. Well, the question that I am waiting for your response on is this: if Parliament is dissolved right now, would you re-elect your member of Parliament? Well, this is Omwana Wazipora Luocho from Bungoma. Your name is John Abanda. And you're saying, akina mama mjitokeze, msimame mjionyeshe kuwa uongozi unatoka kwa Mungu wala si binadamu. This is in relation to the dissolving of Parliament that has been proposed by CJ David Maraga. Well, I want to hear from you. And I just want to know, would you re-elect your member of Parliament? Okay, with everything that is going on in our country right now, would you re-elect your member of Parliament? This is Evelyn, and they're saying, good evening, Sarah. Mimi, no way. I am not redoing the same mistake. Thank you so much, Evelyn, for that. Diana, and you're saying, I am tuned in to This Is The Day. Asante sana for the good show. Bado, I'm still not decided whether I would re-elect him or not. Bado hajanionesha he's worth my vote tena. Thank you, Diana, for tuning in today. Well, Parliamentary Health Committee today toured KEMSA offices in the ongoing KEMSA COVID-19 probe. This came a few days after the Director of Public Prosecution narrowed down to 6 individuals who are likely to be charged.
Telling Kenyans really what happened, because that's the biggest question. About donations also, like the JACMA, there was a presentation about JACMA, and we were told the items were received here. And the items have also gone out. So we also went to the counties in Kemri, where we were told these items went. We have done the verification, whether the donations were received, and they are still receiving more donations. So there's also a balance between the donations we are giving, the items that have been procured here. Counties are also procuring. The President had opened 3 months grace period for the counties. It's over, so we don't know whether they'll still buy from KEMSA or they are going to do their own private procurement now that the 3 months are done. There's a lot of debates, and you know that I think the Senate were discussing it with the governors on the capacity of KEMSA to supply the counties. So this is will be part also of our reports on our investigations and our findings on capacity of KEMSA to supply counties. Also noting that also counties, some of them also owe KEMSA a lot of money. So our report is going to be all inclusive so that we give a very candid report, and we're also going to give a way forward on our recommendation, and especially towards the management of KEMSA. We are all aware from May the market flooded, and so the prices have gone down. So there's one issue of, yes, KEMSA might have good quality, but these items are readily available out there cheaper. So they are target markets, and they said it was a projection by the numbers that were projected by October that we are going to be at the peak. So they over-procured. And so the prices currently are low as 250.
Well, remember the probe on the KEMSA issue is still ongoing and in court right now. Well, let's wait and see how that unfolds. Now, a group of peace activists from the North Rift region have called on the delinking of the Building Bridges initiative from the constitutional amendment process in order to reduce the political temperature being witnessed in our country and avoid polarization in our country. Top on the agenda were recent inflammatory remarks by politicians from different political parties have been made.
We appeal to our political leaders to observe peace and avoid inflammatory remarks that will further divide communities in the region and in the country too. We urge the political leaders to tone down the political rhetorics and calm down the rising political temperatures across the country.
Why don't the BBI have their agenda and drive their agenda to the ultimate call, so that we have constitutional review and amendment process just as it is? Because the question would be, what is in a name? So if you are talking about Building Bridges initiative, let them carry their agenda and run their race, and allow Kenyans, incorporate Kenyans to discuss about the 2010 constitutional review and amendment process, just as plain as day and night.
What is happening around BBI is really dividing the country, because, you know, the issue is, where did BBI begin? It began by a talk between the former Prime Minister and President Uhuru. After that, it was political rallies around the country. What we want is a very natural constitutional amendment that brings everybody on board.
BBI, the process should really be managed in a way that it ends up into a win-win situation. The whole idea of making a lose and win situation in the country, when we are saying we are one country, it does not make sense and does not augur well, does not communicate well to the future generation.
Well, now to other news. Residents of Kirwangi village in Jambini, Kinangop have remained in darkness despite nearby centers enjoying the use of electricity. Every year, incoming government and politicians have dangled the promise of electricity connection to the farmers, only for this to end up in bitterness and anger. Now they're tired of waiting, and the farmers have now decided to sell part of their livestock and crops to buy transformers so that they can enjoy electricity like other Kenyans.
Watoto wangu waperform mzuri, wanakuja Motero huko nyuma, sababu hakuna kusoma. Wanasoma saa gapi na hawana stima? Kanyitira yezi peleka ya nyumba nini table mwati wasome juu ya hii moshi.
Kazi yetu sana hapa tunapendea sana kwa tunafuga ng'ombe. Na kama tungekuwa na stima, tungekuwa hiyo kazi ingekuwa rahisi sana. Badala ya kukata hii nyasi na paga, kama stima, tungekuwa na stima, tungekuwa tukiweka hiyo kwa mashini na ingekuwa kazi rahisi sana.
Saa ingine tunatumia hii taa ya gilasi hii karaboi, na saa ingine unaona tuko na betri. Kama miezi hiyo umeenda, unaona hakukuwa na jua, kulikuwa na ukugu. Tuko na shida sana. Wakati kuna jua kama sasa, tunatumia betri saa ingine. Betri inaenda saa ingine inaharibika, sola inapoteza nguvu.
The last mile is actually a project that does not exist. We have heard about the issue of last mile. What we only see is the post. Posts that do not have wire, and the people of Nyandarua and more so of Karwangi Central, they are not interested in the post. They have enough posts that they have actually used for the purpose of fencing their farms. What they want to see is actually power.
Well, reminds me of the project by the DP, Last Mile Connectivity. All right, and they're saying in their area, all they've seen are posts. And right now, they've decided to do what their leaders could not do. All right. Now, this is Tamtam Otieno from Mombasa, and he's saying, my sister, voting in Kenya is like committing sin to God because we choose thieves. So in order to be clean, I will stay away from voting. All right. Well, Tamtam, asante sana for that response. This is... You didn't give me your name, but you're saying, hello, Sarah, I like the show for today. That story that just ended about... That story that ended about Kamwangi, that is my home area in Nyandarua. It is very sad that hakuna stima. Well, indeed, but right now the residents and the farmers of this area have decided to take it upon themselves to make sure that their children can now study in peace, even if it's late at night, and avoid the use of koroboi, as they call it. Now, to some international news, protesters facing a localized lockdown in some of Madrid's less affluent areas, flooding Spain's capital yesterday, frustrated by what they say is discrimination by the authorities. Madrid's general government announced last week that movement between and within six districts, which are home for about 850,000 people, would be restricted, although people living in these areas would still be allowed to go to work. The restrictions were announced as an attempt to stem the city's soaring COVID-19 infection rate, but predominantly hit the low-income areas with higher immigrants population. Protesters are also calling for the resignation of Madrid's regional leader Isabel Díaz Ayuso, who has come under fire after claiming that the way of life for immigrants was partially to blame for the rising of the cases. Well, very unfortunate for the immigrants of that area. Well, United States President Donald Trump has indicated that he will announce his nominee for the Supreme Court at the end of the week, intensifying on an already nail-biting campaign for the presidency on November 3rd this year. Behind the poll against a Democratic opponent, Joe Biden, and widely criticized for his handling of the coronavirus pandemic, Trump is seizing on the sudden vacancy on the country's highest court as a way to change the subject and supercharge his right-wing base. The death on Friday of Justice Ruth Bader stripped the court of one of the most steadiest liberal votes. Listen in.
Wow. Now they want to impeach me again if I nominate somebody, as I'm constitutionally obligated to do, to serve on the Supreme Court of the United States. Go ahead, and I want them to do that. I want them to do that. We will. So we're going to put up our nominee, who's going to be outstanding. We're looking at 5 incredible jurists, 5 incredible people, women that are extraordinary in every way. I mean, honestly, it could be any one of them. We're going to be announcing it on Friday or Saturday. So as our nation mourns the loss of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I will soon announce a nominee for the United States Supreme Court. They say it's the most important thing a president can do. I don't know. I think military, maybe. You know, we rebuilt your military, $2.5 trillion. I don't want to make the men too angry. It will be a woman. Is that okay? I don't want to have a problem with men. They'll say Trump is doing very poorly with men, you know.
Well, they'll say Mr. Trump is dealing very cruelly with men. That is what he said. But he's given as a hint that he might be voting in a woman for that position. Talk of gender rule and gender balance. Exactly what is happening in our country right now. Now to some positive news. The World Health Organization has announced today that countries representing close to 2/3 of the world population have joined its plan to buy and fairly distribute the COVID-19 vaccine around the globe. It also unveiled a mechanism through which it plans to allocate the vaccine as it becomes available, aiming to end the acute phase of the pandemic by the end of 2021. Well, WHO has also pushed countries to sign up for a plan that will buy a vaccine in the huge quantities and distribute in an equitable way, but it has been grappling with the two big issues: how to get high-income countries to join instead of hoovering early vaccine supplies for their own population, and how to share the vaccine in a very fair way once it becomes available.
Encouraged to see a large number of countries signing up to the COVAX facility, but we face some daunting challenges. For the ACT Accelerator to work as planned, it must be funded.
As of today, 64 higher income countries, including 29 economies operating as Team Europe, have submitted legally binding commitments to join the COVAX facility. We expect as many as 38 more countries to join in the coming days, many of whom have already publicly stated their intent to do so.
What the WHO is pushing for is equal distribution of this vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, once it's available. Talking about sharing. Take it upon yourself to share the small things that you have, as much as it can be little, with that person that needs your help. Thank you for tuning in to This Is The Day. My name is Sarah Otieno. Have yourself a lovely night, and I will see you tomorrow.
For this and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs, from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.